The storm outside had started to weaken, the howling winds slowly turning into a soft breeze. The world beyond the cave was still covered in a thick layer of snow, but there was a promise of calm. Inside, Adam sat near the fire, his mind restless. The decision he had made, to accept the bond with Kayla and Zira, was not something he had taken lightly. He still wasn't sure what it meant or how things would change, but one thing was clear. His life had been altered forever. The sisters, now fully recovered from the freezing cold, sat with him, their presence filling the cave with a warmth that went beyond the fire. They were no longer just strangers from an alien world. They were now part of his life, and he was a part of theirs. The bond had been formed, and though Adam didn't fully understand it yet, he knew that it was something important, something that would shape the future. Zira, the younger sister, was sitting cross-legged near the fire, her golden eyes reflecting the flames. She had grown quieter in the past few days, perhaps processing everything that had happened. Kayla, the older sister, was more reserved, but equally present. She sat beside Adam, her eyes often flicking to him, as though she, too, was trying to understand what the future held for them all. "I've been thinking," Adam said, breaking the silence that had settled over the group. He had spent the last few days trying to make sense of the emotions swirling inside him, but he couldn't keep them in any longer, about what this bond really means. Zira looked up at him, her face calm but curious. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now," Adam admitted, his voice filled with uncertainty. "You've offered me this bond, and I've accepted. But what happens next? What do I owe you? What do I owe myself?" Kayla, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Her voice was steady, but there was a tenderness in it that Adam had come to appreciate. "The bond is not a debt, Adam," she said quietly. "It is a promise of trust, of loyalty, of being there for each other. We don't expect anything from you that you aren't willing to give, and we don't expect you to become someone you're not. We simply want to be by your side, as you are by ours." Adam nodded, though he still felt a knot in his stomach. It wasn't just the alien customs that confused him. It was the emotions inside him. He had never been in a situation like this before. There was a part of him that wanted to pull away, to retreat into the soldier he had always been, keeping things simple and clear-cut. But there was another part of him, one that had grown over the past few days, that didn't want to leave them behind. He couldn't. Not after everything they had been through together. "I'm not good at this kind of thing," Adam said, his voice rough. "I don't know how to be what you need me to be. I don't know how to be in a bond like this. You don't have to be perfect," Zira said, her voice gentle. "None of us are perfect. We just need to be ourselves together. The bond isn't about being perfect, Adam. It's about understanding each other, about supporting one another." Kayla smiled softly. "We don't need you to be anything other than who you are. The bond is not a burden. It's a connection, one that we share because we trust you and because we believe in you." Adam felt his heart beat a little faster. He didn't know if he could live up to what they were offering, but the way they looked at him, with trust and understanding, made him feel like he could try. He could try to be someone more than just a soldier, someone who was worthy of their trust, of their companionship. "I don't know what the future holds," Adam said slowly, his voice steady. "I don't know how this bond will work or what I'm supposed to do next, but I do know this. I won't turn my back on you. I won't leave you behind. I'll figure this out somehow." Kayla's smile widened, and Zira's eyes softened. "That's all we ask," Kayla said quietly. "We don't need you to have all the answers right now. We just need you to be here, with us." Adam nodded, feeling a weight lift from his chest. It wasn't about having all the answers. It was about being present, about showing up for each other even when the future was uncertain. He didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in days, he felt a sense of peace. The silence that followed was comfortable, the kind of silence that spoke volumes without the need for words. The bond, though still new, felt like something real between them, a promise, an unspoken understanding that they would face whatever came next together. The storm outside had finally subsided, the wind now a gentle breeze. The snow, while still thick, had begun to settle, as if the world itself was taking a breath, ready for what came next. The cave, too, seemed to be at peace, the warmth from the fire now spreading through the space, comforting and familiar. Kayla stood and walked toward the entrance of the cave, her footsteps light in the quiet. She paused for a moment, gazing out at the snow-covered landscape, the remnants of the storm still visible in the distance. "We'll have to leave the cave soon," Kayla said, her voice thoughtful. "The storm has passed, but we can't stay here forever." Zira stood as well, moving to stand beside her sister. "We need to find a way off this planet. There are other people, other survivors. Our mission is not yet complete." Adam watched them both, his mind already racing ahead. He had known that this was only a temporary refuge, a place to recover. But now he realized it was more than that. It was a turning point. Whatever came next, he would face it with them. They were no longer just two alien women he had saved. They were his companions, his partners in whatever future they chose to build together. "I'll go with you," Adam said, his voice strong now. "Wherever we go, I'm with you." Kayla and Zira looked at him, their eyes filled with warmth. Without another word, Kayla turned back to the cave, and Zira followed. Adam stood up, walking over to join them. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't alone anymore. As they stood together, the storm outside seemed like a distant memory. The bond they had formed, the trust they had built, was something that no storm could ever take away. They were ready for whatever came next. The days passed slowly in the cave, each one blending into the next as Adam struggled to make sense of the growing bond between him and the alien sisters, Kyla and Zira. The storm outside continued to rage, but inside, there was a quiet calm. The fire from the heater kept them warm, and the sisters had regained their strength. But Adam was no closer to understanding what the bond meant, or how he was supposed to respond. Each time Kayla or Zira looked at him, their eyes seemed to speak volumes. They were waiting for him to make a choice. But Adam wasn't sure he could. His life, his mission, had always been so simple. Follow orders, survive, and move on. But this was different. They weren't just some people he had helped along the way. They were something more. Something he didn't quite understand, but felt in his chest every time he looked at them. The cave was quiet now, except for the occasional sound of the wind howling outside. Adam sat near the fire, staring into the flames, trying to think. "What should I do?" he asked himself, his mind racing. "What do I want?" The choice before him felt like a heavy weight pressing on his chest. He had saved the sisters from the freezing storm, but that wasn't why they were offering him this bond. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper, something cultural, and Adam didn't know how to handle it. "Adam," Zira said softly, her voice breaking through his thoughts. She had come to sit beside him, her eyes soft with understanding. "You don't have to decide right away. We understand that this is difficult for you. We have our customs, but we are also aware that you are not one of us. We don't expect you to just follow our ways without thinking." Adam turned to her, feeling a pang of guilt. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I don't know what you want from me. I didn't do what I did for some reward. I just wanted to make sure you were safe. And now," He paused, looking down at his hands. Now, everything is so complicated. Zira smiled gently, her golden eyes filled with sympathy. You are not obligated to accept the bond, Adam. Our people value honor, yes, but we also value choice. It is your choice whether or not you accept. All we ask is that you understand what it means for us. Kayla entered the conversation then, walking over from the corner where she had been resting. Her movements were graceful, despite the weariness still lingering in her posture. She sat down beside Adam, her eyes meeting his with a deep, unwavering intensity. We owe you our lives, Adam, Kayla said, her voice steady and calm. But we also want you to know that we are not asking for something from you. We are not asking for you to be with us. We are offering you something. Our trust, our companionship, our promise of support, whatever you need. Adam felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He wanted to say something, to explain that he didn't know how to accept what they were offering, but the words wouldn't come. He could feel the weight of their expectations, their need for him to understand their culture, but he wasn't sure he could. The human part of him felt so out of place here, so small compared to the weight of their customs. I don't know if I can live up to that kind of promise, Adam said quietly, his voice filled with doubt. I'm just a soldier. I don't know how to be anything more than that. Zira reached out, placing a gentle hand on his. You don't have to be anything more than you are, Adam, she said softly. You have already given us something more than we ever expected. You saved our lives. That is enough. Kayla nodded in agreement. We don't need you to be a hero or a leader. We just need you to be with us in whatever way you choose. Our people offer this bond to those who prove their worth to us. You have already proven that. You've shown us what it means to care, to fight for those who need you. That's all we could ever ask for. Adam's heart ached as he listened to their words. They were asking him to accept a part of their culture, something so deeply embedded in their lives, and all he could do was stand there feeling helpless. He didn't want to hurt them, but he didn't know if he was ready for the commitment they were offering. He stood up abruptly, needing to move, to think. The wind outside howled louder now, as if echoing his confusion. He walked toward the entrance of the cave, staring out into the white expanse. The snow was relentless, the storm still not showing signs of stopping. And yet, Adam found himself thinking about what he had promised in that moment of desperation, when he had pulled Kayla and Zira from the freezing cold, when he had fought to keep them alive. I don't know how to accept this, Adam said quietly, turning back to face the sisters. I don't know how to be part of your world, but I can't just leave you now. I can't turn my back on what we've been through. I can't turn my back on you. The sisters exchanged a look, their eyes softening as if they had been waiting for these words. Zira stood up and walked toward Adam, her eyes locked on his. You don't have to understand it all, Adam, she said gently. You just have to be willing to try. That's all we ask. Kayla joined them, standing beside her sister. We're not asking for everything, only for you to see us as equals, to see us as more than just a rescue mission. We are not asking for your love, though it may come in time. We are asking for a partnership, a promise to support each other as equals. Adam felt the last of his resistance crumble. He had been afraid of what this bond would mean, afraid of the future. But as he stood there, looking at the sisters, he realized that they weren't asking for something he couldn't give. They weren't asking for him to be something he wasn't. They were simply asking for him to acknowledge their connection, to accept the bond that had already been formed in the chaos of survival. He took a deep breath and nodded, the weight of the decision settling over him. Okay, he said softly. I'll accept the bond, but on one condition. The sisters looked at him, their expressions full of curiosity. I need time, Adam said, his voice steady now. I need time to understand what this means. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I'm willing to see where this goes. I'm willing to try." Kayla and Zira smiled, their faces lighting up with relief and gratitude. Without another word, Kayla stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. "We understand," Kayla said, her voice warm. "Thank you, Adam, for everything." Zira also stepped forward, standing beside her sister. "We are grateful. We don't expect perfection, only that you walk this path with us together." Adam nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over him. The decision had been made, and though he didn't have all the answers, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone anymore. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. As the storm continued to rage outside, the warmth of the fire in the cave seemed to grow even stronger. Adam stood with the two sisters by his side, no longer just a stranger in an alien world, but a partner in a bond that was deeper than survival. And in that moment, he knew that whatever came next, they would face it as one. The storm outside raged on, but inside the cave, the air was warm. The heater hummed quietly, filling the small space with life-giving heat. Adam sat near the fire, his eyes flicking between the two alien sisters who were now resting. The warmth had revived them, and their pale skin had returned to a healthy glow. But even as he felt the relief of their survival, a new sense of unease began to settle in. He had saved them from certain death. But what now? They were no longer just strangers from another world. They were the women he had fought to keep alive. The bond between them, though born of desperation, was real. Adam could feel it, and it unsettled him. The sisters, Kyla and Zira, lay close together, wrapped in the warm blankets Adam had found. They spoke softly in their alien language, a melody of words that Adam couldn't understand, but that seemed to convey a deep sense of trust. He had done what he could, but now he was unsure of what they expected from him. They had their own customs, their own way of seeing the world. In the short time they had spent together, he had come to realize how much more complicated their lives were compared to his own. Kyla, the taller sister, was the first to stir. Her eyes opened slowly, her golden irises blinking against the dim light of the cave. She glanced around, her gaze landing on Adam, and for a moment they simply stared at each other. "Thank you," Kayla said, her voice soft but filled with deep emotion. "You saved our lives." Adam shifted uncomfortably. "It was nothing," he said, though it didn't feel like nothing. He had risked everything to bring them here, to keep them alive, but he didn't want to make it sound like he had done something extraordinary. He had done what anyone would do in that situation, right? "No," Kayla said, her voice firm despite her weakness. "You don't understand. For us, your actions are beyond just survival. You've done something our people would never have expected. You've saved us, and now we owe you." Her gaze didn't leave his. There was a strange intensity in her eyes, one that Adam wasn't sure how to respond to. Before he could speak, Zira, the younger sister, shifted beside Kayla. She sat up slowly, her eyes meeting Adam's. "We know our people's ways," she said softly, "and we are bound by tradition. When someone saves another's life, they are honor-bound to offer a bond. We must offer you something, a sacred bond." She paused as if weighing her words carefully. "It is a promise, a pledge of life." Adam blinked, confused. "A bond," he repeated, trying to understand. He knew there were many customs among alien cultures that were strange to humans, but this was something new. What did a bond mean? Was it some kind of alliance, or something deeper? Zira nodded, her golden eyes reflecting a quiet sadness. "It is a bond of respect, of life. You are not only our savior, but now part of our story. Our people do not take this lightly, and it would be dishonorable for us to leave this cave without offering you what is owed." Adam's heart raced. He had saved them from certain death, yes. But what did this bond mean? Was it something he could accept? The weight of the situation pressed down on him, making it harder to breathe. What would a bond between him and these sisters look like? He wasn't sure, but something in his gut told him it would change everything. I don't understand," Adam said, his voice shaky. "I'm just a soldier. I didn't do this for any kind of reward. I just wanted to make sure you were safe." Kayla reached out slowly, her hand resting lightly on his. "It is not a reward. It is our way of honoring you, and it is our way of making sure you are never alone." She paused, her gaze intense. "You have saved our lives, and now we wish to offer our lives to you in return." Adam felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had never felt so conflicted. Part of him wanted to pull away, to remind them that he was just a human soldier, a person who had no place in their world. But another part of him felt a strange pull, a connection to these sisters that he couldn't explain. In that moment, he realized that he had already crossed a line. He had been willing to risk everything to save them, and now he was in a situation where he wasn't sure where the lines were anymore. "I didn't ask for this," Adam said, his voice a little rougher than he intended. "I just did what I had to do. I'm not looking for anything else. I don't even know what this bond means for us." Zira's face softened, her voice gentle. "You don't have to decide right now," she said, her words comforting. "But we must tell you that for our people, the bond is not something to be taken lightly. It is a promise of life, of companionship, and you are part of our story now." Kayla's expression didn't change, but there was a quiet intensity in her gaze. "You saved us, Adam, and that means we are yours, in whatever way you choose. We are yours to protect, yours to care for, and yours to trust." Adam stood up abruptly, running a hand through his hair. His mind was spinning. He had no idea what he was supposed to do. This wasn't just a mission anymore. This wasn't just survival. This was something bigger, something he had never prepared for. And in a way, it terrified him. "I don't know what to say," Adam admitted, his voice low. "I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't expect any of this." "We don't expect anything from you," Zira said quickly. "We simply wish to honor the bond that our culture requires. It is our way, our tradition. You are the one who decides what comes next." Adam felt the weight of her words sink into him. He was the one who decided. How could he decide something like this? He barely knew these women. He didn't even understand their customs, their way of life. He was just a soldier, not a king or a leader of an alien race. He turned toward the entrance of the cave, looking out at the storm. The wind still howled, but there was a stillness inside him that made the world outside feel distant. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. He couldn't just walk away from this. The connection between them was real, even if he didn't understand it yet. And whatever came next, he knew he would face it with them. Together. As Adam turned back to face the sisters, he saw the hope in their eyes. They were trusting him. They were waiting for him to make a choice he wasn't ready to make. Not yet. But in that moment, he knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened, he wasn't leaving them behind. He had made that decision the moment he stepped out into the storm to save them. And now, that decision was more complicated than he could have ever imagined. The storm raged outside the cave, its howling winds louder than anything Adam had ever experienced. Snowflakes danced and whipped against the walls, but inside, the cold was less biting. The small, rocky shelter provided some protection, though. It did little to stop the freezing air from seeping in through cracks in the stone. Adam sat near the entrance, his body numb from the cold, but his mind sharp. He couldn't allow himself to rest yet, not when the two alien women were still so close to death. His breath was still visible in the air, coming in quick, foggy puffs. His hands shook as he reached for the last of his emergency rations. There wasn't much left, but it would have to be enough. The two sisters were huddled together on the ground, wrapped tightly in the thermal blankets he had managed to give them. The first woman, the one who had collapsed, was breathing more steadily now, though her face remained pale. Her companion, the other sister, had curled up next to her, keeping her warm. She looked up at Adam every so often, her golden eyes filled with gratitude, but also fear. Fear of the cold. Fear of what might happen next. Adam had never felt so out of place. He wasn't a medic or a scientist. He was just a soldier, trained for combat and survival, not for caring for others in such extreme conditions. But his instincts told him to keep pushing, to keep fighting. He could not, would not let them die here. "Are you okay?" Adam asked, his voice hoarse from the cold. He turned his attention to the second sister, the one who had not yet lost consciousness. Her eyes met his, filled with a silent understanding. "We will survive," she said, though the words sounded almost like a promise to herself more than anything. "But the cold, it is killing us. Our kind cannot last long in this." Adam glanced at the woman beside her, her breathing still shallow. Her skin had warmed, but the chill hadn't fully left her body. "I'll keep you safe," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "We'll get through this." The alien woman nodded, though Adam could tell she wasn't convinced. He didn't blame her. There was little anyone could do against the kind of cold this planet threw at them. It was a kind of cold that gnawed at the bones, a deep, insidious chill that no amount of fire or blankets could truly fight. Adam stood and walked further into the cave, hoping for some sign of hope, something that might lead him to a solution. There was nothing but rocks, snow, and ice as far as he could see. He took a deep breath, willing himself to remain calm. Stay focused, stay alive, he told himself. He needed to think. And right now, he needed warmth. They needed warmth. He returned to the sisters, his mind racing. "I'll go out and try to find some fuel, maybe something to start a fire," Adam said, though he knew it was a slim chance. The storm was unforgiving, and no one knew how long it would last. But there was no other option. He needed to do something. "No," the second sister said, grabbing his arm. Her golden eyes were filled with intensity. "You will not survive out there. It is too dangerous." "I don't have a choice," Adam said, trying to free his arm from her grip. "We all die if I don't." For a moment, there was silence. The sister stared at him, her gaze unwavering. Then she let go of his arm, her face softening. "Please, be careful," she said quietly. Adam nodded, feeling a weight in his chest. The trust in her eyes hit him harder than he expected. He had only met them hours ago, yet here he was, willing to risk his life to keep them alive. He would not let them down. With a final glance at the sisters, Adam stepped back into the storm. The wind howled, biting at his skin. The snow was blinding, swirling around him as he made his way deeper into the blizzard. The world outside the cave had turned into a white nightmare, an endless expanse of ice and wind. He couldn't tell which way he was going. There was no ground, no direction, just white and cold. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Adam wasn't sure. His legs felt like they were made of lead, the cold air scraping against his face. He had to push forward. He had to keep moving. He tried to stay focused on finding something, anything that could help, but all he could see was snow. Suddenly, through the storm, something caught his eye. A dark shape, barely visible through the haze. It wasn't much, but it was something. Adam pushed himself toward it, fighting through the biting wind. As he neared, he saw that it was a half-buried metal structure, possibly a remnant from an old settlement, maybe a research station. It was hard to say, but it was worth investigating. If it had any supplies, even a little bit of fuel, it could mean the difference between life and death. He forced open a rusted hatch and stepped inside, his breath catching in his chest. The air inside was still, but it wasn't much warmer than the storm outside. The walls were coated with a layer of frost, but there, near the back, he spotted a small storage unit. Adam hurried over, trying to stay calm. His hands were numb, but he forced himself to work quickly. The storage container opened with a loud creak. Inside, there were several sealed crates, some filled with survival gear, others with equipment he didn't recognize. There was one crate, though, that caught his eye, a small portable heater, the kind used by explorers in freezing climates. It was old, but it could work. He had no idea how long it would last, but he knew it was his only hope. Adam grabbed the heater along with a few other supplies, some food rations and a few warm blankets, before he made his way back to the cave. The storm was still roaring, but the heater was a beacon of hope. He had what he needed. When he returned to the cave, the sisters were still huddled together, their faces pale but alive. Adam wasted no time. He set up the heater, carefully unwrapping the blankets and placing them around the sisters. The warmth slowly began to seep into the cave, and the change was immediate. The second sister's breathing steadied, and her body began to thaw from the cold. The first sister, who had been unconscious, stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, and she looked around in confusion before settling on Adam. Her golden eyes widened in recognition. "You're alive?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. Adam nodded, a small smile forming despite his exhaustion. "We're all alive." The heater hummed quietly in the background, providing warmth that was more than just physical. It was the promise of survival. Adam could feel the bond between them growing stronger. They had made it through the worst of it. For now, they were safe. As the storm continued to rage outside, Adam sat beside the sisters, watching over them as they slept. His mind raced, but for the first time since the crash, he allowed himself a moment of peace. He had done it. He had kept them alive. And something more was starting to grow between them. A connection. One that he didn't yet understand but knew was real. The storm outside was still fierce, but in the warmth of the cave, Adam felt a flicker of hope. Whatever the future held, they had survived this together. Lieutenant Adam Carter had never imagined he would be stuck on a freezing alien planet, far from home and surrounded by nothing but endless snow and icy winds. It had been a simple mission, or so it seemed. The objective was clear: transport critical supplies to a distant outpost. But when the storm hit, everything changed. His ship, the Horizon, had been caught in a violent blizzard. The crew did their best to stay calm, but the storm was relentless. The ship's systems began failing. One by one, lights flickering, engines sputtering, and communication lost. Then, with a deafening crash, the ship plummeted to the surface. Adam woke up in the wreckage. The cold was the first thing he felt, a sharp bite that made his body shiver uncontrollably. He tried to move, but his head throbbed painfully, and his limbs felt like they were frozen. The ship's metal frame had crumpled around him, and there was no sign of the others. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to breathe slowly. His training kicked in. Stay calm. Assess the situation. He could barely see in the thick snow that had blown into the wreckage. His heart pounded as he stumbled out of the cockpit, the icy air biting into his skin. The blizzard was still fierce, and he couldn't tell which way was north. Adam checked his emergency supplies: food, a thermal blanket, and a flare gun. Not much, but it would have to do. He knew he needed shelter fast, or he wouldn't last long in the freezing cold. His breath came in heavy clouds of missed as he trudged through the deep snow using the flare gun to signal any nearby ships, but nothing came. Hours passed. His body felt like it was turning to ice, the weight of the cold growing unbearable. His vision blurred, and he could barely keep his eyes open. He was losing hope. But just as his strength began to fail him, he spotted movement in the distance. At first, he thought he was hallucinating, but the shape was real. Two figures, staggering, struggling to stay upright in the snow. Two aliens? Adam could hardly believe his eyes. They were tall, slender, and wrapped in cloaks made from thick fur, but their skin had an almost glowing quality. Their faces were beautiful, but their expressions were twisted with pain. One was falling behind, unable to keep up with the other. The one in front turned and shouted something in a language Adam couldn't understand, but it was clear they were in distress. His mind raced. He knew he should keep moving to find shelter, but instinct drove him to help. They need help, he thought. They were in the same danger he was, struggling against the deadly cold, just like him. But Adam didn't have much time left himself. Without thinking, he sprinted toward them, pulling out his emergency heat source from his pack. The wind whipped around him, but he reached them, his breath ragged. The taller of the two women, her eyes wide with fear, looked up at him as he approached. "Are you okay?" Adam asked, his voice hoarse. He had to shout to be heard over the howling wind. The woman stared at him, her expression unreadable. She opened her mouth to speak but collapsed to the ground, her body succumbing to the cold. Adam cursed under his breath and dropped to his knees beside her. "Stay with me," he said, his voice filled with urgency. He quickly unwrapped the thermal blanket and draped it over her. Her skin was cold to the touch, more like ice than flesh. She shivered violently as her companion, who had been struggling to stand, rushed to her side. She, too, was on her knees now, gazing up at Adam, with confusion in her golden eyes. The other woman's breathing was shallow, her face pale. Adam could see the desperation in her eyes. She was aware they were running out of time. "I can't help her," the second woman said weakly in a language Adam didn't recognize. Her voice was broken, filled with grief. Adam didn't understand her words, but he knew what she meant. They were out of time. "I can help," Adam said, though he wasn't entirely sure how. He had no medical training, and the cold made everything harder. But he had to try. Using what he had, he wrapped the thermal blanket around both of them and tried to warm them as best he could, sharing his own body heat. The woman who had collapsed shivered violently, but seemed to regain a little color in her cheeks. Adam looked at the other woman, her eyes still locked onto him. "We need shelter," he said, his voice strained. "Now." The second woman nodded, her face filled with a mix of gratitude and fear. She helped the unconscious woman to her feet, and Adam supported them both as they staggered through the snow. Every step was a struggle. The storm was unforgiving, the wind so strong it threatened to blow them off course. They walked for what felt like hours, but Adam kept pushing. "I can't lose them," he thought. They were too close now, and if he let up, they would all die in this storm. Finally, in the distance, Adam saw a dark shape, a cave. A small spark of hope flared inside. Him. He pushed forward, carrying the alien woman on his back as best he could, while the other woman helped guide them toward the shelter. As they reached the cave's entrance, Adam collapsed against the rocks, out of breath and frozen to the bone. The cave wasn't large, but it offered a little respite from the deadly wind. It would have to be enough. He made sure the sisters were settled, draped in the thermal blanket and as warm as he could make them. The cold had seeped into his own bones and his exhaustion was nearly overwhelming, but he couldn't rest yet. They would be safe here, for now. But he knew this wasn't the end. He couldn't just leave them to freeze, not now. Not after everything he had been through to get here. They were both alive, but not out of danger yet. "Thank you," the second woman whispered, her voice barely a whisper. She glanced at Adam with a look of awe. "You saved us." Adam nodded, not knowing what to say. He was exhausted, drained, but there was a part of him that couldn't ignore the bond he felt growing between them, the strange, undeniable connection that was forming in that moment of survival. "You're welcome," he said, though the words felt inadequate. But they were all he had to offer. As he sat down against the cold stone, exhaustion finally taking over, Adam allowed himself a moment of rest. The storm was still raging outside, but for the first time in hours, he felt something close to peace. They were safe for now. But deep inside, Adam couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far bigger than he could understand.